So what do you do? Like, who are you?
I am Jade Drakes. I am an artist. I'm a jeweler. I have 2 kids, so I'm a mother. I make jewelry. Yeah.
How did you get to start making jewelry?
I know people ask this question and I'm never prepared. It's just second nature to me. It's something I have to do. I could say that, you know, when I was really little, my dad would put buckets of beads in front of me so I wouldn't disturb him when he was painting because he was an artist. But I don't even think there's a reason for it. It's just all I know is if I'm not doing it, I'm not happy. It's always wrapping stones, making beaded necklaces for friends my entire life.
So what has your journey been like as a jeweler? Like, if you could punctuate your life with what you were doing, how would you do that?
All right, so before I got schooling, I would take wire from electrical cords, strip them, and wrap stones with them. And I would make necklaces for myself. That could be a reason why I'm a jeweler, because I love to make jewelry for myself. And then in 1998, I went to university. I studied metalsmithing and theatre. In the metalsmithing department, there was a really great professor called Professor Berea, and he taught us to work with bone. He was very famous for working with bone. His nickname was the Roadkill King. So he always said, make friends with farmers, because then you get the bones, you cut it up, you make jewelry. And after that, I took a long break from going to school. I remember that he went on a sabbatical, so I never really got to finish working with him. And there was more to learn. I learned the basics in metals in Slippery Rock University. That was the first one. I learned the basics, but then there's more problem solving and setting stones that needed to be learned, I guess, in order to make everything that I wanted to make. So I waited like 10 years, saved money, worked in retail, and then I went to North Bennett Street School, where I became a fine trade jeweler. It's a fine trade school in Boston. And there you learn everything. So if you were to work in a jewelry store, you go into a jewelry store and you hear bzzz in the background. That's me in an office in the back. You learn how to size a ring up, down, anything that is typical in the industry. So I'm glad that I went to that school, but it wasn't the route that I wanted to take because it's quite stressful. Like setting somebody's really expensive diamond or polishing, like I remember polishing $100,000 watches in my job, and it doesn't feel good, you know, because I don't want that responsibility. And I knew that in me there was always a good designer, but design is something that it helps when you're taught. And that's what took me to Italy, my final year, where I went to a special school called Alchemia. And one of the best decisions I ever made, and I'm glad that it went Alchemia after technical school, because you learn the basics and then they teach you how to unlearn all the techniques and be more free and find out who you are as a jeweler and find out how to go deeper in the direction that you want to go, and more about making sure you are happy and you have integrity in the work as opposed to trying to please customers. So yeah, after that I went off on my own, working and making jewelry.
Was deciding to design your own jewelry like a difficult decision for you?
No, not at all. It's what I was going to do.
Mm-hmm. And so, like, starting your own business, did that scare you? Did you ever feel like you should fall back on something that's more reasonable?
Yeah, there's a lot of up and down, back and forth, questioning yourself, especially when you've got like, well, now I have kids, so now it's like you have to make money, you know. Before it was like, oh, well, I could just go to my mom's house and eat mangoes and I'll be all right. But now it's like, you must make money. So who needs jewelry? What do they need? But at the same time, it's not the way to go. Like pulling back, and my granny always used to say, you can't please others unless you please yourself. And that's when the work sells. And at the same time, you have to find a balance because you got to pay the bills, right? So there's one particular ring I make right now that's quite popular. I get a lot of emails from strangers. It's called the robot ring. So this ring was supposed to be made for a customer who was young and didn't have a lot of income, because my friend had a market, and that was a customer that was coming through the door. And so I took this really inexpensive big stone and I tried to set it, but it was really big, so it needed support. And the support came out as a square, and then off to the side I had a pair of earrings that weren't finished, so I took the earrings and put it at the side of that, and in the end it looked like a little robot, and it was not inexpensive at all. It was very expensive with right angles and 3 gems. So at the same time, I learned to not focus on who you want this for, and just let the process happen, let the piece breathe, let it talk to you, and then whatever comes out in the end, as long as you're not overthinking it, it's gonna be good. Mm-hmm. You know, like my other professor always said, like, work from your gut, as opposed to thinking from your head, you know, money, because then it muffles the work.
Mm-hmm. So you talked about not overthinking it when it comes to design. Do you think that extends to how you live your life? Like, you've mentioned living in at least 3 different places now, so would you go into that?
I kind of say yes to a lot of things. So I ended up in a lot of unusual and unique and magnificent circumstances because somehow I'm just lucky. So I had the opportunity to study in Italy, and I put it together, okay, I will make my resume better to compete with other people in the industry when the economic crisis happened. But at the same time, you know what? I have a brother and sister in Italy. Let's try to find them while I'm doing this. I try to put as much as possible in what I'm doing, because I feel like it's always a one-time opportunity. With a limited income, you have to, like, you know, cram it in. And I did meet my brother and sister for the first time in Italy when I was like 34 years old. I made the best friends ever there. And I don't have any regrets at all about jumping around and trying new things like that.
So where else have you lived?
Italy for 1 year to study, to get my resume looking better. And Ireland, yes. Back the beginning of the pandemic, I was literally like praying for a miracle. Trinidad is a lovely place to live, but in order for my work to sell, I needed to get out. The mail system can't be trusted to receive silver, to send pieces out. It's very expensive to clear silver from the customs. So for that reason, like, my career has really suffered being stuck on a little island in the Caribbean. So it's fantastic for retirement, but not for me, particularly as an artist. So I was literally praying for a miracle. Like, I'm like, something has to change. And there's this page on Facebook called UK Jewelers that I never open up because I'm not in the UK, and there was a shop for sale in Ireland, and I literally started with $0 and I sold everything I own. I gave a lot of free classes in exchange for buying my tools to pursue the opportunity to possibly buy the shop. Now, I knew that I couldn't from home say I'm buying the shop. I always knew that there might be a reason it might not be mine, but that didn't stop me. So myself, my friends, we all did what we can to get me there. A friend here in America started me a GoFundMe, and I went to Ireland for about 5 to 6 months, and it was just perfect. Like, the shop was perfect, the people were lovely. It's like at the end of Ireland on this little peninsula called Crookhaven, and people always joke, they're like, you left paradise to come to paradise? They call it the end of the world. And it did not work out for a couple of reasons. In order to work in the UK, you have to be an EU citizen. So I'm working on that. It will take some time. That's a process that I'm going through in the hopes of being able to go back. But I found that the shop, the actual contents of the shop, I found the price too high. So I gave them a counter offer, which I'm really proud of myself, because I'm not a very business-like. I'm all passion and soul and get it done. But when I actually sat and looked at the prices of stuff, I found that in order for me to make a profit within a short amount of time, within a decent amount of time, I would have to give them a counter offer, and they did not accept it. So those two factors brought me back to America.
So with all of these places that you've mentioned, like your family in Italy, growing up in Trinidad, and loving Ireland, where do you consider your home?
I don't know. I don't feel anywhere is home right now. I mean, even Trinidad, that I've lived there the longest, I feel like it was kicking me out. It was difficult to find schools for my son. I don't know for what reason. A lot of the schools turned me down. In America, it's very expensive. It's hard to live here, but I'm trying again. I'm gonna try and make it happen this time. I'm trying to work things out while I'm here. But basically, wherever these kids can be happy and a proper education, give them that base is home for now. And then later on, we will see where I could dig some roots. I really loved Ireland though. Like, I felt at home there, you know, I really liked it.
Do the places that you've lived make a part of your identity? Like, do you feel like everywhere that you've been has become part of who you are now?
I think I've adapted, but I've always been myself. I feel like almost betrayed, you know, like I belong here. There was one school who just kept telling me, come back every Friday. And then I gave up and I turned to the security guard and I said, can you tell me what I'm doing wrong? The security guard at the school. So can you give me some pointers, because, you know, help me out. And she went, they're basically looking for people with prestige. And I think showing up with my straw hat because the sun is hot and pushing a stroller and maybe no fancy keys to a car in my hand made a difference. I don't know what it was, but I felt like, I don't know. I felt like I wasn't good enough, or I don't know what it was. I really don't care. If it doesn't work out, I move on to the next thing, and I make sure that right now we're in a good school and we're okay.
So you said you move on to the next thing. I know for a time you were doing something else. What was that you were doing?
Before I went to Slippery Rock for theatre, I was basically acting and doing my best without training. A lot of my friends are actors back home, so it was a lot of fun. You know, getting to see beautiful places in Trinidad with a team. I don't remember the name of the company, it was a very long time ago, but there was a soap opera we did called Westwood Park, and it's over 20 years old, so you can see a very tiny Jade acting very, very green, very nervous in front of a camera. I don't know what happened. I think the youth and the vibrancy of like being on the beach in my swimsuit back in the day, I don't think you can get me to do things like that now.
So now we're talking about the passage of time, and how has the way that life has changed as you're living it affected you? I mean, and specifically about technology.
It's a lot. It's too much for me, way too much. I'm having a very difficult time. It's a lot of staring at my phone and crying because like I'm trying to job hunt, I'm trying to enroll kids into certain things that they need, and every single person is like, just go online. But when you go online, it's not, you don't get hair back, you don't get email responses back. And I think what the world is trying to do is, yes, go online to keep us safe, but they're not following through. A lot of these websites too, they prefer that you use a computer and not a phone, and they don't say this. So I didn't have a computer for a long time, and I'm there fighting with my phone and feeling like I'm doing something wrong. You know, people don't even like watch movies together anymore. Like it's rare. They watch little snippets of this and that, and it just has you in your phone because you just want more and more of these little videos on your phone. I remember I remember like in university seeing a guy with a little TV in his hand, and I was like, wow. I'm sounding old, but like now TV is like, this is TV. Yeah, it's a big change. I'm gonna stick with what I'm doing and continue to talk to people even if they look at me like I have three heads. Like I'll continue to avoid it.
How does the social situation in this neighborhood feel like?
That's a good question. When I came here, I saw a lot of signs stuck in people's gardens. Black Lives Matter, I love this person, I love that person, but I'm not seeing anybody. And when you pass people on the streets, and this is from coming immediately from Ireland, where every single person I cross paths with say, good day, how are you? Talk about the weather. And not just talk about the weather, most of them add a little something. Are these your kids? You look so beautiful, I love your curls. You know, they add to it. Here, I'm like, a woman should look at a woman and nod hi. And I would say 1 out of 5 do.
So how did you find your niche when it comes to jewelry making? Or how, I know that you said that you always made jewelry,
Yeah.
but like, how did you decide from being an artist or like a young artist to be a jeweler and then to make the kind of jewelry that you did?
That's a good question because it's something that I take my time, and a lot of circumstances led to that. So I work with a gallery back home and they send us off with a theme, and I go deep into that theme and I come out with a body of work. And it's been, let's say I graduated in 2011. I have found ways to pull strengths from every group body of work I make, leading me to where I am now. So the 2 sets of rings that I make, the mushroom rings and the robot rings, I get a lot of emails from strangers and friends on these 2 particular pieces. So I'm sort of relieved and glad to not have to think of designing so frequently now and really narrow that in. At the same time, I'd still dabble and make a cute little necklace on the side or something sweet, you know, for myself or for a friend. But it gives me the opportunity to have a guaranteed sale, you know, as long as the demand matches up the finances, then I'll be all right, because a lot of people love these 2 pieces. So
do you have any other projects that you've worked on?
yeah, I teach this really wonderful class called The Animal Inside You. So we use like 6 or 7 different ways of making art, going deeper and deeper into that topic, and it really pulls out the individuality out of each student, and the most magnificent work comes out of that course. Because I find a way, it takes time, I find a way to make people shut their minds down and use their gut when they're working. This is something that my teachers passed on to me, and I sort of adapted this specific class, a little bit of theatre classes and a little bit of art classes, and created this workshop. And that's what I work on. That's one of the ways I teach and work.
Do you enjoy teaching?
Oh yeah, especially when you can see someone who didn't think that they were a good artist see what they could create, for sure. Yeah.
Did motherhood affect the kind of art that you make?
No, I found a way to separate it. Now a lot of people said, wow, the work that you're creating now that you're a mom is fantastic. But I feel very individual when I'm working, and I often say to myself, I don't admit that I love my work as much as I love my kids. I feel guilty I used to feel guilty admitting that, but the years have gone by and I still feel the same way. So I'm proud to say that my work is me, and so they don't really influence my work so much, you know. I don't think that they've influenced it, but some people say that they have. it has.
A part of your website explaining like your dog.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I mentioned one of my teachers. He was fantastic. So he would come to teach us, and he would give us a project and leave us. He would leave us for like 10 weeks. He would say, okay, you have to do 10 blind drawings a day on a story, and we would discuss the story in class. Something personal or something you strongly have strong feelings about. So he left me alone for 10 weeks, and I'm like a little bit, I wouldn't say lost, but at a certain point it's a long time. 10 weeks is a long time. So I started to branch off a little bit. So I was making, he said make faces, and I was making my grandmother's face, because a very long time ago we took care of someone's like hound, a very bird-eating dog, and the dog ate my grandmother's chicken, and she was just carrying around this carcass, bloody, like there were like guts in her hand, and crying and screaming, because that was her pet, that was her love. And the hound was just like, well, it was a chicken, like what do you want me to do? So I made some of the chicken, I made some faces of the chicken, some faces of hers, some faces of the dog. And we got together as a class, and they said, I love your dogs, make more dogs. I'm like, okay. So my professor came back and saw all these faces, and he was asking me to make one particular face again and again, because repetition is actually very, very good when you're an artist. And he said, what are you doing? You're all over the place. You didn't take the assignment correctly. And I was like, well, the kids said, the people in class said the dogs were great, like, so I made more dogs. And then he just sat for a minute, and he was really quiet, doing his thinking thing. And he said, okay, make more dogs. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. I won an award. There's this gallery, her name is Mazi. She goes around to all the graduate schools at the end of the year, and she selects 2 people to be taken over to the Netherlands and exhibit their work. And at that same time, I had a dog that I was really close to. So I did a lot of her faces, and I also went deeper and studied dogs that were domesticated by homeless people, because they were all over the piazza where we were in school, and I made good friends there. I studied one particular dog whose owner, he walked him every day far into the country. They're homeless, they're living on the streets, but he walked it every day. And then I studied another dog who was never taken off the leash and really close to the person at all times. And I made those faces, and that's how I ended up having a body of work to show based on dog faces. And I would love to do more like that in time. These are one of the things that I couldn't do in Trinidad, because then in Europe you just send it over to the country nearby and electroform it, and they mail it back, and you know, in Trinidad it takes forever, it gets lost. So I'm hoping to go back and into something deeper like that again at some point. But for now, I'm gonna make the bread and butter pieces that are still my babies. So
what about the ones that you called my people?
My people, yeah. I was just graduated, and I sent all my tools back to the US, and all I had was wax. So I took the wax, and the school was closed, so I searched all of the school and found dead bugs. I took their wings off, and I electroformed them. That's a process where silver goes from a big chunk of silver through a bath onto whatever you put in that bath, but you must first baste it in the metal that you want to attract to it. So on the wax, I built up silver pieces that were little people on them with wings. And I just, whenever I make something, I always think of a person.
So when you talked about when you were doing the dog faces, was that jewelry school or was that art school?
That was Alchemia is a conceptual jewelry school. So it's not just, you don't just make the jewelry. There's a reason behind everything you do, and it's a lot of discussing and study of art history. So, yeah.
And I feel like I know the answer, but do you are you happy that you went to conceptual
Oh
jewelry
yeah,
school over?
best decision, best decision. When I lost my job in 2010, I was writing a technical school in Italy. And I was writing Alchemia, the conceptual jewelry school. Alchemia was very professional and responding to emails. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna dabble in it a little bit and go there for maybe just one semester and do the technical school for a year. When I got to Italy, like, you open the door to Alchemia and the director, Lucia, she comes running to the door, big hugs. And again, that technical school was not answering my emails. And it was a very big worry for me because this is the last bit of my money that I have to compete with jewelers back in Boston when I come back. And I say to her, I'm worried. This is what I have here. This money. When this is gone, I don't know what else to do. And I want to go back and teach or work in a really good shop. She said, I cannot tell you what we do here. You have to trust and you have to just wait and see. And in her eyes, I understood what she was saying. She couldn't put it in words better than that. And it was the best decision ever. Because they really found a way to set you apart from the rest.
Your jewelry, though, when it comes to just your life, are you as confident with just the way things are going? I'm having a tough time right now because I'm starting from scratch, trying to rebuild a body of work, trying to find tools. So it's a bit of a rough patch right now, but fortunately I've had good people donate tools and I'm on the way to getting stuff done again. So I'll be all right. Yeah, as long as like the emails and the desire for my pieces matches the income that's coming in, I'll be all right.